Yeah, I figured I'll just read a little Maimonides, the guy that the perplexed, or of the lost, or of the sad. What's Nebuchadnezzar mean? Nobody knows. Not perplexed. It's either lost or sad. Because it says, what does it mean? They were perplexed.
Okay, what would the word reflects for that? Like you letter? Victor understandable?
How would you call him? I don't know. But the other probably means lost, like in Nebuchadnezzar, it's... Okay, anyways. So the Meir Nevuchim in the third Tzedek has his part of Tamia Mitzvahs. And this is where he gives his opinion on the mitzvahs, famously many problems with his theory, or problems for certain people. But in any case, and he has an important chapter about mitzvahs of Me'adim, Sefer Zmanim. And we could learn that and see what it says. Maybe in general, should we read the whole thing? Just about Sukkos. I think we'll start at the beginning and skip around the Sukkos. So it's like this. You have to remember the general, most general klal of Tamia. It's basically two things. Well, three things. First thing is, the Rambam understands that the mitzvahs have a reason. And that reason means a goal, an end, right? Doesn't necessarily mean, he does start off that way, but it's not about, like, why does God want? He doesn't think that God wants, in this sense, anything. They have a reason in the way that anything that God does, anything in nature, has a meaning, right? Which means it has a goal, it intends something, it's for something, that there's a for every mitzvah. Right? Just like there's a for anything else in the world, there's a for the mitzvahs. And the for, or actually the tachlis, or the final cause, is in general, the Rambam says in Perek Chav Zayin, the general cause. Again, cause has many meanings, right? So mostly when we talk about time mitzvah, think about the famous fourth cause, which is the end, the final cause, the result, the goal, the thing that we're trying to get at. After doing the mitzvahs. And in the most general sense, he says that the mitzvahs have split into two kinds of causes, or two kinds of goals, which are, in his language, tikkun hanefesh and tikkun haguf, the completion of the body and the completion of the soul. Right? These are two important things. They could themselves be separated out more if you want, but in general, a human being has two levels of perfection. The first is what he calls the bodily perfection, or human perfection. You know, you have to be healthy, you have to be smart, you have to be happy, you have to be psychologically healthy. You have to even have many virtues that pertain to being psychologically healthy, and then we can add socially healthy or social. You have people don't live as self, people live in a society. So we need the society to work. Right? That's all part of the first perfection, which pertains to the body, or potentially called this world. Without that, nothing gets started. It's important, right? Unlike many people nowadays who think that the Torah is not about that at all, for some reason, and they think that just can happen by itself, or doesn't matter, or whatever. Well, no, nothing starts without that. So that's the first thing. Then there's the second perfection, which is the real end, right? The real thing that we call a human being, and the real thing that people are meant for, which is, not thinking this, bad word, but knowledge, or insight, or perfection of their soul, or really of their mind. And that's how you get to Adam Haba, and that's why we have, basically the mitzvahs that I have are about this, are mostly the mitzvahs of, obviously that played of the first part, Sefer HaMadar, right, the book of knowledge, book of wisdom, and that's the goal of everything, right, in a certain sense, just like that's where we have B'chol Masef Tilish Shamayim. The reason why we eat is so that we can be healthy or full human beings, and then you could do what full human beings are to do, which is to think or to know, and so on. And there might be things after thinking also, if you read the end of the book, or actual knowledge. We could call it actual knowledge. Okay, so that's the most general theory. So the most general theory, in other words, every mitzvah you have to find, and this is the way the sense of the Rambam thinks the mitzvahs make sense, right? They make sense, and that every mitzvah is either for the prefecture, for some kind of way of fixing the body or social reality, or it's for fixing the soul, fixing the bad word. The tikkun means completing, right? Completing the soul. In other words, teaching you a truth. So it's either teaching you to be good or teaching you truth. And good, of course, for every level of good, right? There's good just as utilitarian, useful, or maybe even pleasurable for the much as pleasure is important for life, and definitely how to be good for all the virtues, all the good mitzvahs and things like that. That's the most general theory of mitzvahs, right? There's one more thing that we remember in the beginning, and so that's the tool. Everyone knows this. And there's one more thing, which is where it becomes complicated a little, of course, and this is like probably what the Rambam would call the secrets of the Torah, which is we always get stuck with history. And the Rambam has this long Hakdamas about this, where you could say, okay, so all mitzvahs are meant to make us better people and full people, right? For all levels of better people. And then we end up with a sort of a fact, which is that many mitzvahs are the way they are because of all kind of history. So since the Rambam has this theory with the Zora, since there were certain mistakes that people had or certain things that lead into bad kind of societies or bad kind of midas, both of these kinds of mistakes. And there's all kind of mitzvahs, which the Rambam says if you actually read history, you start to understand many mitzvahs without too many explanations. So you see, so this is Moshe going against that bad idea, or this is Moshe going against this, and so on. And that's one of the things he says, which many people are upset at, because that seems to relativize the mitzvahs, because then you ask, okay, but now that we don't have that problem, why are we still doing it, right? That's the basic question. But of course, for the Rambam, that's not a real question, because whatever, it's not a very important question if you do it or you don't do it. That's not the most important thing. The most important thing is the actual goal of the Torah, which is taking on nefesh or taking like off.
They said that.
And the fact that this question is like a secondary question. It's like, so why do we have sukkahs in September or whatever, in Tishrei and not in Cheshvan? Okay, because whatever. These are not really important questions. They're only relevant for really like interpreting the Torah. Or maybe you might need to learn from this to still counteract all kind of mistakes that people now have, if you're a real true leader. But we discover a better. I don't think the Rambam is interested in that's very important. He's not doing apologetics. He's not interested in justifying why we have to have a sukkah. He's trying to explain the truth. And the truth is that we'll get to why the sukkah. But the truth is that some of the things are the specific way they are because of history. And then once you know the history, you don't ask more questions. Of course, it's the way it is because of that history. And if you ask me, okay, so do I still have to do it? Well, whatever. I don't know. That's a much more important question. Okay, I'm going to stop here because I'm going to get stuck with it.
It's the point he's saying that because it's so general, you can't ever get caught up in the very specific thing. It's a general point. For example, you would say that generally, historical thing could also contribute to this general idea.
It could contribute, but not by way of history, by way of the truth that it teaches you.
Yeah, no, so any iteration of something is going to be somewhat arbitrary.
Yeah, right.
Once today, why Sunday, Monday? You says why Monday?
Either way, it could be practical. I think that's the source.
In other words, like he says about Karbonis, it has to be one way, so all life will be this.
Where I live is very rainy, right? It's just very rainy. We're going to talk about the rainy.
We're going to talk about that problem. That's a problem, but I'm just saying, I don't want to get into it. I just want to give the general theory. The point is the perfection of a human being. That's what the Torah is for. And this is also therefore it must be understandable, right? Human perfection is important. There's like an assumption behind this, which is that human perfection is something he knows what it is, right? Unlike someone else would say, we have no idea what it means to be a good human being, just following these rules and somehow getting somewhere is the point. No, I know basically what it is, or maybe I don't know in every single situation in life what to do, but I know in general terms what it means to be a full human being. And I know that from reason, from tradition, from many ways, but I know that. And the mitzvahs are a way to get there. Now, is it true that if you have 5 minimum and you're a little bit instead of 4, you're not going to get there? I don't know. He's not committed to saying that. I think that we're way too committed to saying that, and there's unplanned to be a good reason for saying that. Okay, that's my other tradition. You know this already. So that's the general story of course, even the historical thing, since we are part of this tradition. Someone says, well, Pesach is to remember Yitzias Mitzrayim, whatever that means. Okay, so it's going to get you to whatever that means. What does bother you? That could have been a different universe where I was not, or I could have not been born to this family which went out of Mitzrayim, and okay, then you wouldn't have Pesach. Or maybe you would by being a get, being mitzvah to this world, okay, whatever it is.
Okay. This should never consider maybe to throw that. I might say now we can't do anything, but
yeah, I think that's a different question. Maybe we could, maybe we can. These are practical questions.
So you say here, you can imagine practically that now that we have this historical, not to work anywhere else. It's supposed to be trapped in this. We have talked about. Doesn't mean that land.
Yeah, maybe not. I don't know. But that's halacha. That's not my class. I don't tell anyone what to do. I only tell you how things are, and then you have to understand yourself what to do. That's my shita. And the Rambam's shita. Anyone that's waiting for the Rambam to say, like, yeah, you should do it this way is not worthy of his thoughts. That's what he thought, at least. I mean, he's worthy of some thoughts, but there are other ones, not these. Okay.
Thank you. Her, she's wonderful. I wanted to be your mother on Shoshana. The light is too sharp.
It's not enough, you mean to say. It's imbalanced. So with there needs to be more also.
Tell her how you had that she's very lucky, and I'm sure you're very lucky too.
Thank you.
So let's get to know.
Here, I think, for it. We'll definitely come back.
Enjoy.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Okay, we're going to get into the details. That's all. That's the general story. So now we're going to learn about holidays.
Good question. Is it better wax? You're a better way.
Okay, we're going to think about if there's a better way. Maybe now we're going to talk about the holidays. So like this. So the Rambam goes through, and what he does in his Tamei Mitzvahs is he goes through 14 categories of mitzvahs. Again, this is part of his way of making sense of things by pushing them into very short lists of categories. It's not 630 mitzvahs, there's only 14. Corresponding to the 14 books that he wrote, not entirely, but that's just like the number that he likes. But there's only 14 mitzvahs, basically. In other words, 14 kinds of mitzvahs, and the rest is details, So the 8th category, that's what I'm reading here. So the 8th the 8th kind of mitzvahs are mitzvahs which are in Sefer Zmanim. This one actually almost perfectly matches to a book. Yeah. There might be some parts in that book that are not included here, but it almost perfectly matches. They have a chart and looking on and figure it out. But anyways, it almost perfectly matches to a book in the Rambam, which is Sefer Zmanim. It's the 4th book, right? But here it's the 8th category. Okay. It's the 4th book. 3rd book. And that was Zmanim. Okay. The 3rd book. And that's mitzvahs of Sefer Zmanim. Okay. So the Rambam says like this, and I'm just gonna read through the chapter a little bit. He says like this. Now, if you want to know the reason for these mitzvahs, in all these mitzvahs, all of the mitzvahs of Ma'adim, Sat for some, he says, I'm not sure which is the thinking of. They're all in the Torah. So in other words, there's some mitzvahs where we can have like a discussion. Is there a reason? Do we know the reason? Do we have to like start speculating? But most of the mitzvahs of Ma'adim, we don't have to speculate because the Torah actually itself says the reason. Actually, there is a few that don't, like Shavuos and Rosh Hashanah, which he assumes the Chazal's reasons, but they're not in the Torah. So maybe his meaning that it means that. But the rest of them are explicit. The Torah says why they have, or at least in some general terms, why they exist. So we don't really have to speculate, right? Okay. So, and then what he does is like this. I'm just going to give you what he's doing so you understand if you read it. I don't read the Hebrew now. What he says is like this. So he starts, and the way it's very interesting because his structure here is very much his structure that he made in Sefer Zmanim and the Rambam. It's not the structure that's anywhere else. It's his own structure, which he's working with. So he's working with, if you read Sefer Zmanim, you see that the Rambam has this structure of Ma'adim. He thinks like this. There's two kinds of Yom Tov, firstly, or two kinds of holy days. One is Shabbos, the other one is Yom Tov. That's already two. So we have these two boxes. Okay, put everything in. Shabbos has, Isam Melacha and everything, and then there's Yom Tov, which has less of Isam Melacha, different halachas.
And then we have detail. Each Yom Tov, and there's like certain mitzvahs that we do on Pesach, we eat matzah, there's hilchos from matzah. And if you notice, Rambam is extremely interesting. There's no other halacha book before him or after him that works for this kind of categorization, where there's like, there's no hilchos Pesach on the Rambam. There's hilchos Karban Pesach, which is that we read from book. But there's hilchos matzah, what's it called? Chametz matzah. There's hilchos shayfer sekelulav. There's no hilchos. So, there's Shoshana, no. The Shoshana is just a Yom Tov. As far as the Yom Tov, there's also a mitzvah and a Shabbat, a shayfer. Okay, so then there's shayfer.
There's also
Sukkah and what?
the day is true.
Well, the tshuva is different. No, I'm not going to get into that. Yeah, but that's a whole third mitzvah. Can't.
But it brings up the day more there. Day is a shadow.
But that has to do with whatever you organize that differently. But as far as the Zmanim is concerned, there is the Yom Tov, Shana is Yom Tov, and then there's like one detail, one prat, which is that on one of the days, like in the Hilchos Yom Tov, there's a list of every day that you have to do no melacha and the way of Yom Tov, man. There's a list of 7 days, right? That's all. And that's and the Hilchos Shana doesn't say. I mean, does say, but it doesn't say like there's a day of a Shana and then we do shayfer. Just okay, shayfer we belong on the first day of Tisha, but it's not. It's organized very much according to those terms. So interestingly, I said that there's 2 kinds of it. There's really 3, right? Or really 2, because Yom Kippur is basically Shabbos, insofar as Hilchos Melacha is concerned. And that's why in the Rambam you have Hilchos Shabbos. I'm trying to remember if that's the correct order. Hilchos Yom Tov, Hilchos Shabbos. Well, there's Hilchos Erev in between, which is just part of Hilchos Shabbos. But okay, Hilchos Shabbos, Hilchos Yom Tov, and then Hilchos Yom Kippur. Shvisas Oser, which has Yom Kippur, which is basically the same as Shabbos. Basically no analysis about the Melachas. But then there's Talis of Yom Kippur, which he puts in the category of Shabbos and Shvisa. You don't eat and you don't work. 2 things that you don't do on Yom Kippur. And that's still part of it because it's like a Shabbos kind of holiday. Belongs to the category of Shabbos. It's not
all that we can eat on Shabbos. All the Greek historians say offers don't eat on Shabbos.
Well, some maybe could have all day to eat, but they don't.
All the meat, sorry.
Okay, that was confusing with Yom Kippur. I don't know.
Hey, it said they all say this, that Jews don't eat on Shabbos.
Okay, the kid said we have Shabbos, Yom Kippur, which is a kind of Shabbos, and then we have Me'adim, which separated to these 3, 4 different mitzvahs that we do on them. And this chapter works sort of with that structure. So he starts with Shabbos, and he says, well, Shabbos, you all know the reason. I don't have to tell you. It's what? What's the reason of Shabbos? That says Shabbos time I'm a first event, so I don't have to explain it. That's very short. Reading the Rambam now. What did the Rambam say? Kvarnoida. Everyone knows Shabbos is for resting. A 7th of your life, you rest. This is something that the Romans hated, right? The Jews are this lazy nation. This 7th, they don't work once a week. How do they get anything done? Now it says Shabbos, everyone knows. It's the 7th of their life. You got to rest. That's a good thing. And what he's doing here, and there's an explicit chapter about this in Chalei Beis. What he's doing here is saying, even Shabbos starts off with Tikkun Aguf. Of course, Shabbos is going to say exactly the next line. But even Shabbos, as the first line, he actually thinks that there's a pasuk that says this, which is the pasuk of Zechel Yitzias Mitzrayim by Shabbos. The Chasnis seem to say this. Why do we have Shabbos? It says, Laman Yenoach. So you should rest. Well, you and yours, I'm the whatever, everyone. But people need rest. Why do people need rest? It's like a nice thing. I don't know.
It's so here that every, including your slaves.
It's like a good thing. It says like I need to explain you why you should rest the 7th. You should have a set pleasurable day every 7th day. Like you need an explanation for that. I need to force you to do that. Just do it. So that's the first reason. But that's very clearly him thinking that Shabbos belongs to this. He seems to think that almost every mitzvah has both the body and the soul. Both the it's just a good thing for a human being, and it also has to teach you something. That's the first thing. Like everyone has problems, everyone has work. So once a week you don't work. And the second thing is that it teaches this, what he calls Chiddush Olam, and this he discusses, these 2 things he discusses explicitly in Chalei Beis, whatever it is, about Shabbos having 2 reasons. Perek Lamed Aleph. 2 reasons. One is Sheshes Bereishis, as it says, and the other one is Yitzias Mitzrayim. And he understands Yitzias Mitzrayim as being, as far as I understand that chapter, there's what it means, but I understand it saying that Yitzias Mitzrayim is, since we're not in Mitzrayim, we don't have to work. So Shabbos what allowed us to have Shabbos where we don't have to work is not being slaves.
Isn't there a measure that's English right away? Yeah, that's a nurse.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the first thing. Okay, so that's Shabbos. And then he goes to Yom Kippur, and he says, in Yom Kippur, we also know, it actually doesn't say in the Torah ever that this is the reason of Yom Kippur. This is one of the things that maybe it says, depending on how you read it, but he says like this, that Yom Kippur teaches us about Tshuva. She knows in Das Tshuva. Okay, I give him a whole series of classes on this word, Das Tshuva. Anyways, and he teaches why it's this day. It's the day that Moshe Rabbeinu and Nevi'im came down with the Luchas Shneas and told them the Slicha of the Chata Egel, doesn't say Chata Ma'godal, their great sin. And therefore, that day is forever was created, a Yom Tshuva V'Avodah Gemurah. It's a day just of doing Avodah. And that's why we don't do any of those Gashmias. Not a lot.
It has an ad al-Kodesh, right?
What?
Torah literally has a chibur al-Kodesh, right?
It does have Kivim as the end of verse Akrama says more things, which depending on how you read it, but it does Vidya. The Rambam does have Vidya, and the Rambam, well, Vidya in Kippur sort of comes from the pasuk in Akrama, as it says, this we learn that everyone has to do Vidya. It says Vidya in the story. So the Rambam understands this as something that everyone has to do because of the whole shtickle Torah that he has in the beginning of this tshuva. So anyways, so it's interesting that Shabbos is this day that has both the body has happy and the soul is happy. And Yom Kippur is only for your soul. It's very explicit. It's like Shabbos, but it's even more than Shabbos because on Yom Kippur we don't do any melech and don't even eat. So Shabbos you eat. But Yom Kippur can be called like Yom Tana, good see Yom Inai, but it's just doing tshuva. Okay, so that's up there. Now we have days that are at least also very much focused on this Tikkunan nefesh, right? Shabbos again has also the good for it. Also, Marian the Torah talks about it, and the Rambam says even in Perek Lamed Aleph over there the reason why Shabbos is of the Askila, and he says something very interesting by the way. It says and Chalik Beis Perek Lamed Aleph, you know that Shabbos is a very important thing in the Torah. So how do we know this? Well, it's Shabbos. And you know that the one real prophet that we ever had, or the greatest one, actually killed a person. And they have a story. And it's interesting how he's thinking. He's saying like, there's a lot of things that say the Torah Chayav Mis, but the only one thing that we know that Moshe Rabbeinu actually killed someone for. Oh, there's one more thing. And it seems to be a more like there's a distance between the saying Chayav Misa and Moshe. If some random guy kills someone, but Moshe killing someone, that shows you something. What do you mean Moshe? Moshe just has to do the love like every other year. No, it's different.
Everything would just be Ben Sinner. He made Ben Sinner.
I think that everything is like that.
Right. So
because I don't think like, okay, there's a different thing that I think. I don't think that there's the fact that it says that Torah Chayav Misa means that you must kill him. It means that if you really want and didn't fall, whatever. There's a Bezdin, Bezdin's job, Rambam says this explicitly many times, is to decide if things work. And since he sees that Moshe did it, and Moshe is this perfect ideal that he has, and only does the real perfect things, so this teaches us how important it is. Yeah. Okay. So that's Shabbos.
In case you said was the only one.
There was the...
It's saying how bad is 3,000 people.
Okay, that's a problem. The Rambam talks about it in... Avodah Zarah. The Rambam believes that the only real reason that Torah kills anyone is for Avodah Zarah. And that's an interpretation of Avzai and Amiman and all of those things. And but he don't know. I don't know. He doesn't say that. He didn't kill himself. He just sent Shlicha. And I said a whole pshat here last time that was the Moshe's mistake, and that's why Hashem told me to go with the Sharachman. Okay. Anyway, so that's Yom Kippur. Okay. Then Yom Tovim. So that's what he goes like this. Now Yom Tovim. Okay. So now we're done with the important ones. Okay. Now most of these things are Yom Tovim, just regular Yom Tovim, right? Yom Tov. So what's Yom Tov for? So he says like this. The Yom Tov is for two things. It's for Simcha. Me'adam l'Simcha. It says in the Siddur. You didn't realize Me'adam. Why did he give it to Me'adam? Why did he give it to us? L'Simcha, so we should be happy. As I asked shot. So Me'adam are for Simcha. What's the point of Simcha? It's a useful thing. Otherwise you get depressed. I don't know. And then he says something else. I mean, they said this is part of reason number one. The simcha, but the kibbutzim sheyesh lem anosh, but the adam tzrich man of. So simcha, and not only simcha, the Rambam seems to think, and I think this is the halacha, so that part of Yom Tov is getting together. So simcha is not like sitting in your room and happy b'simcha. So for me, you get a meal, you have your family, you have your friends. The Yom Tov, yeah, that's what the mitzvah Mishlech Manas every Yom Tov. It's a Mishnah and Be'etzah. Not only a Pesach and Chami, it's a Mishnah and Stachtas Be'etzah. Mishalchan Manas B'Yom Tov. Like the Shana Basil, if you let us have things that are not ready. But it's a Mishnah, and from here we learned that Yom Tov you have to do Mishlech Manas. Yeah, so not, but Mishlech Manas is just another way of saying share your meal, right? Like you make a bigger meal, like if guest or you don't actually have guests, so you're like sending the guy a meal. But that's Yom Tov. Yeah, so and that's for Yom Tov for. Or you go to shul and you have a kiddush there or whatever. That's the Raisa of Yom Tov. You don't realize this. You just keep Yom Tov and you don't go to dance, but whatever. Do the Simchas Beis, but then you're not making the Iker Mitzvahs Yom Tov. And the Simcha, a part of Simcha is, hanging out. Okay, what's the point of these things? People need them. It's a human need. There's a human need for some days of pleasure, of happiness. You can't just be litvak all year. So yeah, we have a time once, 3 times a year, whatever the amount exactly is. But that's what Yom Tov for. So that's the push-up shot. That's the body shot, right? And that's the general thing for all Yom Tov have this. So Shabbos is not really simple. Right? Shabbos is more like for Menucha. You have to rest once a week. You have to rest. You don't have to be happy once a week. That's too much. Happy you can be once, 3 times a year. Well, I don't know. These are like balances that all cultures create. It's not. You got to talk about other cultures on us. Okay. Now that's one mad of Yom Tov. So that's like a sort of a selfish thing, right? Every person has a need for some times of celebration, of happiness. So and this is like very nice. I said this many times. I say it's already enough times here. This Sefer Chinuch also, by the way, if you read the Sefer Chinuch from Mitzvah Yom Tov, he copies this thing and he elaborates on it a little bit. How people need some happy days in their life. And again, if you're like a brisker or like a real chassid, some kind of chassid that you're like, what do you mean? Just I want to be happy enough. That's why we need a Torah. And there's some kind of riches in that question. Like, okay, so are you happy? That's all you need it. Or another way of saying it, that the Torah, or is it the Torah is just it's actually about helping people. I mean, like Christos says, other person's gashmis is irachnias. So why can't you think of God working that way? Why are you so worried? Like, no, it has to be like, maybe that also, we'll get to that. But why can't it be, there's a thing that people need to be happy. Well, wouldn't we figure it out ourselves? I don't know. If you figured it out, good for you. But most people don't figure out most things. I mean,
isn't it the premise?
Yeah, people obviously can't figure anything out. And like Sitayda is just a way of saying, yeah, we're helping. It's just to help you. If you figure it out yourself, okay, so say thank you. You don't need thanks, no thanks, whatever. I don't need just help. But yeah, you have to just have the correct mindset. It's not like, it's this. So people are saying, so it's just having happy. Well, yeah, but we're really trying to get this thing called in the life to work, and it's got to work. Does it work for the other people? I have news. I mean, you can. Yeah, I mean, I'm not doing this, but you can go you can try to travel the world and see if people are happy. Or if they figured out this thing that you need like some holidays every year. In the United States, the meaning, Olam must have 2 meals a year with your family. You know, right?
It's getting it for Christmas?
Yeah. You have Christmas. 4th of July is only the Mahmir. Nobody goes home. And that's like very sad. And you're like, do we need it? Yeah, you need it. So you get once a week or once for Yom Tov. It does make the human society work better. I mean, now we're talking about the human psychology. Like, okay, so kids have what to look forward. They get Nash and Shul for the. What's wrong? Why does everything have to be so? Yeah, there's a lot of serious things, and that's for children, but that's awesome. That's where it starts. Yeah. Okay. So that's the first thing. And then it says another thing, did I say something? No. Okay, that's the first thing. Yeah, it's to be happy and to have pleasure.
The halachas are built for this.
Yeah, halachas are like this, but are you like to Simchas Yom Tov with great shoes? Like,
You know what? That makes something come on that. If that's somebody so look like happy, isn't he happy?
Yeah.
Because that's an attitude. Yeah. It was that, but like,
Yeah,
And it's true. Like everything, I actually read. Oh, he has right here Rav Shem Tov, which is a great tradition on the Rambam.
my Schleifman is here. You give it thing, yeah. Because it's all, it's will be don't decide what's happy. It's like,
if you want to ask the question, you ask that question. You could just figure out, or you could just be happy and
Yeah.
friends.
Yeah, I'm giving I'm giving the theory. If someone gets happy, give me that. There's something weird. Okay, we're not getting into like bashing the talk.
we're making the happiness dependable on something else.
So just, again, if you're happy without it, then good for you. Most people, there's always this like, I think there's always a question of to what level you take. It's like, you know, so I was reading the Rav Shem Tov was a great Pershov here says many people think they're smarter than the Rambam. They say that the Rambam is wrong. Maybe it's even kfira because they say this question. He's great because he asked the question. And he says, well, if the Rambam is right, they're Hadan, right? If the Rav is correct, you're out. There's a lot of raps. Then why we have so many halachas for each mitzvah? Like the Rambam says, and we'll see later, that Esrog is a certain kind of happiness and he has a nicer Shabbos. We'll get to it.
Is the Rambam
Yeah.
question?
No. No, the Rambam says, no, wait, listen. And he says, why the Esrog with the Nechlikat Yemes or whatever is fussel? He actually asks the question. Like you're saying that it's to remember that we're in the desert, whatever the Rambam says. So why? So the answer is, he says, like, very simple. Well, since there needs to be these mitzvahs, they need to be the best day possible. What's wrong? Why are you getting stuck? The answer is yes. We want to remember that we once in the desert by bringing this fruit that show us that we're not in the desert anymore. That's an shot. I mean, okay, it's a shot. Maybe there's better shot. But whenever there's a reason. Now, if I tell you to make a kiddush for your thing, you got to bring the best kugel. You're not yet if you bring the shvacha kugel. Oh, yeah, it's only about being happy. Well, you want to be happy or you don't want to be happy? Oh, you want to be like... Now, you can always ask the question, what does it mean puzzle? I'll say things and I'm akid, like if you bring, everyone knows it. But whatever, it's not, all these things are just, they're always looking for the best way to do it. Yes, you should do it the best way. Why shouldn't you? And if, like he says, if you think that Hidder, like if you read the Gemara, you see it, like, it has to be a pretty, Hester, so of course Hester has to be nice. What's the question? What are you up to? But you have to be, like, it's so funny, it's like, it's backwards, right? If it would have been just magic, then I understand why I can't have a black dot. But now that you tell me that it has to just be beautiful and make people happy and whatever, now you don't understand anyway, just the opposite. Now you understand, right? Yeah, of course, it has to be Gishmak Esther. Now I have different questions. What does it mean a good Esther? There's like a machlok. It doesn't mean that it's no dots on it. It doesn't mean it's time that it's a nice Esther. Okay, that's it, yeah. Mamash hunting a machlokes, man.
That's like it would be the opposite. If it was just an essay, just an essay, I'll get the worst one because you have to be. You have to take happiness seriously.
Yeah, of course. You have to take all these things greatly seriously. And I think it's only when you turn everything around, they like think that the thing, the like way, that's the thing you have to protect. No, these are ways of protecting the thing. Yeah. Well, I don't have another. I said, no. If you read the Mishnah, you'll see. If you don't have the you take whichever one you have. Man, we're talking about, but when you do, you could. If you have a choice and you have enough money or whatever it is, then of course you do it correctly. What's the bullshit?
This list itself, like Esther, the halachas of Esther, are sort of geared towards having a nice Esther. It's not.
Yeah, it's a halakha. It's together. Hadar, the shayla. Hadar is the first day and second day, and then so. Yeah. Yeah, and if you have to buy your wife a gift, you have to buy a nice one, and have to be, there's a lot of details in it. Now, what if I just want to give her a piece of grass? I mean, come on. Maybe Yake is the question. It's with the synthetic thing. Okay, maybe it's the same. Yate. Anyways, you have to read these. Read. If you read the halacha backwards like this, or the correct straight, then you see that's very beautiful. It's not about like Nevin, like maybe or not. Like Rav Yitzchok Merako has this argument with Rambamists. He says that many Rambamists in his shul, Rav Yitzchok Merako was Jewish, was from Akko, I guess. I don't know. he considers the Talmud like I don't know who his actual teacher was. I don't remember the traveling rabbi, but he was in where? It was this Kabbalist in Spain, but so on. Isaac of Akko. He was the one that were arguing about the Zohar famously. So, and he has a book called Meir Sinai, which is a Perish on the Ramban al HaTorah. And one of the things that he has is to argue with all kinds of Ibn Chachamim. And he has this thing where the so-called Rambam Chassidim and his Shul were like, Gemara is kind of a waste of time. Like, Rambam says this. We're just arguing about how we should do that. Like, can we decide and move on? That's what Rambam did. Like, let's decide and move on. Like, okay, we figured it out. We have a question we don't know. Okay, moving on. And he tries to answer this criticism. And he says, yeah, of course. But imagine if the king wanted to make himself a beautiful crown. This Mashal Melech, and he didn't tell us exactly how to do it. Or maybe he did, or maybe he has some kind of intention on exactly how to do it. So all the Chachma, how's it called, Betzalel people, the Cheshivim, Machshavos, whatever, the artists and the jewelers and people like that were getting together, and everyone was arguing about, I think that would be nicer to have it on the left side, the jewel, and the right side should have the other symbol. The other guy said the opposite. He said this is all part of the story. You can say, okay, let's just make the crown, and all the friends of the king or the lovers of the king or people that respect him arguing over what they think is a nice one is itself a sort of a gift to the king. It's sort of part of the romance. Like you can't just decide which is the beautifulest ring. No, you gotta go to the store. So that's part of the game. This is how the game works. And there's nothing anti-Mistish with this. I mean, of course, you could argue, which is, again, is it more important to discuss this? Maybe we should discuss the time. Whatever is the discussion and the give and take, it's a living thing. That's part of the thing. It's not like, he's not even disagreeing with their point that, yeah, we got to make the thing in the end. I'm not saying that we don't have to. It's just saying, yeah, there's this language, that Allah has the Shekhinah, and we're making the Kasha the Shekhinah. So how do they answer the question? Just by telling you, yeah, why you like being such boring people? So it's very beautiful that they didn't want to answer with the Alpintumach or whatever. Because of the race. Okay. And I get into this. This is the point. Okay, let's back to my thing. Okay, so that's the first reason for the Yom Tovim is that people need to be happy and having some enjoyment. And most people, he says most people, maybe there's some people that don't need it. No, don't do it. Be it. Take it a VS wine and say that you're so most people don't need it, so they go to the Safil Besha. Okay. And then there's another thing. There's another thing. There's also a value, a utility in having these things. Not only like selfish, because each person has a need to be psychologically healthy. You can't just have no holidays in your life. Also, this helps us because people, in order for the political associations that people have, needs people to love each other. Very important. One of the reasons this is politics. One of the reasons that politics don't work is because we don't go to the same festivals anymore. In the olden days, we had all these sikkim and actually it talks about right. What's the point? Where does everyone this whole the whole Ichud HaPulchan, which was discovered at some point, right? We have to all go to the same why. Some other short tip. So we have all these tribes. Everyone has their own thing all the year, but we need them to work together. We need them at least for defense. If there's a war, we need them to work together. And you don't work for people that you don't meet, that you don't ever enjoy yourself together with. So part of the social glue is all of these celebrations, all these festivals. So this is this political reason for having Yom Tov, and specifically the part of the Yom Tov where the halacha is everyone goes to Yerushalayim, and we're even the from people are even avatar on their chumrus of saying that things are not Torah enough, whatever, they'll go to the mikveh after, we'll take care of it. And all kind of things like all the onomatirimal fadlem avayanim, things like that.
So why didn't where Saddam, or when they do after they search and destroy it.
Yeah, a good question. They did. Look, the sisters were destroyed because of the Romans, and they didn't really last. There actually was. The truth is that if you ask about the tradition of Alil Regel, there was actually a tradition of people doing Alil Regel without the Pessim English. Very ancient tradition, probably from the first.
But they did it in usual.
Yeah, to Dixon Passible.
Well, they were in Baba.
Yeah, okay, so if you can't, people actually would come from Syria and for a very long time. People actually would get together. It was always a thing. And even later, I mean, if you read the Mishnah of Shani, you see people, when they're ready from Mazaka, decided that we're going to have this in Eden, which is going to be the center of Judaism in Yavne. People actually came to Yavne for Yom Tov. And people sit and go to their Rebbe for Yom Tov, whatever. There's always things, and if you read an ancient, and like medieval Ashkenaz and so on, all the little towns used to come into the big town, the big city for Yom Tov. It was always a thing that people got together. We should get together more.
Basel got it right.
Yeah, they're 100% right. All these things, like you have to. This is like I saw a Rebbe. There was this Rebbe complaining. I'm forgetting who. Maybe the Rebbe is one of these. Doesn't make sense, friend. Some Siddish Rebbe was complaining that once upon a time the Vision Rebbe says, I mean that was really gonna show up one of these Siddish Masters. Siddish Masters are the best. You should all read that. All my shit on based on that.
It's just have social media notes for that.
Special. Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't work with sources. It's just like stories.
No, which for the stories you page or your special pages.
Yeah.
Oh, I can remember.
Anyway, so one Rebbe was complaining that once upon a time people went to their Rebbe for Hashem, and nowadays he heard, this is what the Rebbe is saying, that he heard two Balabatim, two business people were having they were trying to make some deal, and the guy said, okay, we have a meeting, we'll meet by the Rebbe at Hashem. We'll finalize the deal. He says, okay, that's why they come. What do they want from me? Yeah, it's fine. But then I said that's why you got to the Rebbe for the Hashem. Much business gets done in all these online places and people meeting, and it's very useful.
Either true.
Yeah, generally.
Yeah, they no, of course.
What's the thing? If you ever want to, if you're looking for any client, go to Hassan. Better chance signing a deal there than any cap. Yeah. So anyway, this is the Rambam saying that's why we have Yom Tov. So people, and it's needed. Like, and again, this is like for business. That's just people need to make money, but also. For any society to work, people need to love each other to some extent. Like, love is a big word. You need to be friends. Some kind of friendship has to exist between all the citizens of the city, and that's why cities put up, all these culture. It's called nowadays.
This has to be a point of emphasis for you. Should strive for that.
Yeah. Again, from people ruin everything because they know that the business is your. Where else should I do business? What do you mean? I shouldn't come there. Like. Yeah, you do it outside after having it for whatever. I'm not saying what. Yeah, it's definitely, again, it's not trying to make it like being, it's being Megashim. I mean, Megashim, God wants you to make business. I mean, and not only business, like you're saying, there's less wars that way, or less real conflict. Many real conflicts get solved that people come to the same weddings, and I've seen it happen. The same synagogues, whatever, it works. Especially if you do all this.
Now in shows sometimes they say no talking. Not even in the basic message. You can even talk outside in the corporate. Yeah, out now that goes so. Yeah, so then I'm not going to go. You're not allowed to. You shouldn't talk in the middle of davening, but should at least for sure. You should. And then whatever. Point is, you have to. Yeah, it has to be either, or maybe at least by my Kiddush Levani station. I don't know. It's part of the thing, and it's not like bad. It's not like subjugating the Rafnis the Gachbis. It's part of the thing. Otherwise, you get too many fights. The people, the story of the Fisher said that the Yaakov Fisher was dying and died of as president, and he was also the officially the Rebbe of Zichron Moshe. Zichron Moshe, and dressed next to Brisk, and it's like this minion factory where everyone. All the schleppers come. And so someone came to Yaakov Fisher and told him that he should stop all the minyanim after his month. What is this all about? He said, look, I'm in the Bezdin. The Vesika people are there every day. The guys that daven on the clock, they never have them tired. No. They have to be a good thing. We should tell all the people worried about all these things. There needs to be a big festival where there's no machit or enough political. So now,
Okay, that's the two like Gashmi's reasons for it in place. So he seems to be happy with this. So the Rambam thinks like Shabbos, like we said, Shabbos in the most general terms has at least also this das, this emunah, this Chiddush Olam thing. Yom Kippur for sure has this tshuva thing going on. The Rambam is very, very interested in focusing that. The Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, you should do tshuva, you should not think anything else. Okay. But Yom Tov, just for fun and for social cohesion, and how does he call it? Love, for friendship, for creating friendship. Okay, then he goes into the details. Then he says, okay, now you ask me, this seems to be how I understand it. Now you ask me why these things. Okay, so every society needs some holidays. Okay, so when should we do that? Oh, I have pshat, why won't you do it? So the specific time that we do it, there's a reason. For example, Pesach, everyone knows why Pesach is what it is. Now, the fact that there is Pesach is just because you need a holiday once in a while. But why is it on Yidal Nissen? Because we're not for time. No. So now we get two birds into the same thing also. And then he asks another question, very interesting question. He has another question. So that's, and he's gonna say he's not gonna talk about Sukkot in a second, and Pesach. And then he says, so there's an interesting thing that Rambam seems to think we have to understand. Again, he's like working with his klal, and then he says, why are some Yom Tov 7 days or some are 1 day? This is a very important question for him. It's like something that cuts through all of the 10 or whatever, 6, 7 holidays that we have. Some of them are 7 days, my Pesach and Sukkot. And some of them are just 1 day, which is Shavuos, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. Basically. And Shvet is part of Sukkot, according to him. He doesn't hold the thing. He talks about the difference, but he teaches that one. It's far of 1 week. It is. I mean, come on. Yeah, Lamdish could say Pashas.
When it says it's in part of Pesach.
Oh, you mean Shavuos?
Sorry, no, Shavuos. Sorry.
No, he does. Yeah, he doesn't. He does talk about that, no, but he sees it as a separate thing. There's Shavuos government. Okay, so he says like this: 7 days. I'm not sure how to exactly figure out the structure, but he says something like this. Firstly, 7 days is a good number. Why is 7 a good number? A week. Why is a week? What's the point of a week? Why is a week a good amount of time to have the festival for?
Why is it not a good number?
Okay, but he actually does. Although he says, if you push me to, well, yeah, so you want 8 from that way. But there's a reason. Well, it's very weird because he sort of said something straight. He should have said that a week is a week because of Shesh Hashem, Hashem, Hashem. So that's why we have weeks. And okay, so we do things in periods of weeks and like parcels of weeks. But it doesn't say that. Very interestingly. I don't know, maybe there's a secret going on here. He says like this, that a week, because there's a pound here, I'll tell you what the pound is. That if you think about it this way, there's a pound. Weeks are an unnatural thing. Noticed. In other words, if you cut up time, there's 2 ways of cutting up time, right?
It's less natural than like a month or a day.
Yeah, right. There's days, which is one revolution of the sun, or of the earth, or whatever you want. One revolution of the sun is a day, or one full revolution of the sun through the zodiac is a year. These 2 things make sense. One revolution of the moon is a month. Well, who cares what the moon does? That's a different question, but at least there's nothing in the heaven to correspond to it. That you could see it in nature. We can not.
Bodies go by the mouth.
What? What goes by the mouth?
Women's bodies.
Yeah, men also don't.
But also, yeah.
Who knows? I don't know what they go by. No one knows. Nobody knows what their bodies like. I don't know. There's no cycle. There must be a cycle. Okay. Well, what's the 7 days thing? So he says something like this. So 7 days is a good period of in between a day and a month. This is something that comes from, you took it somewhere. I keep a class about this once more, with more details. The thought was that if you cut up like this, the natural way to cut up a month isn't the 4. A month is a little more than 4 weeks, but who cares? And this is why, like, we need something in between. A day is too little, and a month is too much. So what's in between a day and a month? A week, and then a month, a week. It's a quarter of a month, sort of. There's no, this doesn't make sense. It does make sense. He says that you know that there's naturally this is true. I think that this has to do with the cutting up. We have this 4 phases of the moon, like, and you can sort of cut a little why pink 4, I don't know. You could cut up in 7 if you really want, but it sort of made sense to some people to account for periods of the moon, and therefore you end up with 4 times 7 is 28. So you have something like in between a day and a month. So that's a sort of reasonable amount of time
oh, it makes sense you found it 4, and it, but another asher is cut in half, but half is too long. So,
Yeah, so 5. I mean, what would happen? It had be 6 days. I don't know.
Is it also part of the reason to, I guess, do this is to distance any like association with Shabbos being a set?
It's interesting because he sort of said Shabbos. He seems to not believe that Shabbos is a natural thing. That's what I'm trying to get at. I don't know.
It's like Shabbos is a zeicha, so it's not natural, right? Rosh Chodesh being a zeicha is something.
There is a, and he says, he does say there is some natural things though. So human bodies seem to care about 7 days. I did this class once. I did this once. Most courses of medicine tell you to take them for 7 days up until this day. Sometimes they do 10 days these days. But 7 is a number that people like. Also, why? The truth is probably that it's like some kind of average. Like, I'm sure that really works out. There's 6 days, sometimes after 8 days, so you still 7 days. But it seems to have been, this is a very ancient medical tradition actually, to do medicine for 7 days. It goes back all the way to the Greek medicine doctors. And so, I don't know. It seems like 7 has some kind of natural. It's an interesting number. All numbers are interesting, but 7 is an interesting number. Okay. There's other things about 7 if you want, but people like number 7. The Torah definitely likes it.
Yeah, but it also obviously like that. That those 7 days is there and nothing else.
Okay, he doesn't give, I don't know. And then he says, I didn't really want to talk about this, moving on. He says this whole thing with the Torah being natural or not natural, there's a whole secret in this 7-day thing. I'm going to skip it for now. Because afterwards he gives a more simple shot with why some things are 7 days and some aren't. And he says, then he skipped it what he says about Shavuos, about counting, so we can get to it. And he says, okay, but basically he says something, then he says the second thing about the 7 days, which just makes easier to make sense of. He says, think about it. So Shavuos is only one day, I understand. Shavuos is Matan Torah. It only happened once. It didn't take 7 days to do Matan Torah. So it's only, and what time is it?
Finish? Pre-shut.
What?
Good, like pre-shut about it. So
there's also 7 weeks of preparing Matan Torah, but the actual thing is only 1 day. And same thing, Shana is only 1 day. Tshuva, how long do you take the Tshuva? Well, there's 10 days of doing Tshuva, but 1 day. But Pesach, he says something like this. He says if we eat matzah only for 1 day, there'd be no use in it. Like, no, man, 1 day you didn't have chametz. So to make a matzah out of not eating matzah takes 7 days. And he says a similar thing about Sukkot. Why is Sukkot 7 days? Sukkot is mostly for Simcha. Seems like even more than Pesach. Because maybe Pesach, again, if you think about the natural thing, I don't know. But if we would say Pesach is just a holiday and then we put it on this day because we tease Mitzrayim. Okay, now that we have a tease Mitzrayim, we have to eat matzah. And now after matzah takes 7 days, something like that. Because just not eating matzah 1 day wouldn't be enough. Where? What? Yeah. The Simcha, the main chag was Sukkot. That's true. Many in separate Vodam, there's Simcha by Shavuos, but mainly by Sukkot. And in general, there's no Simcha anywhere mentioned on Pesach. Almost. Yeah.
it's called Chag.
Not mentioned anywhere. There's only a Gezerah Shuvah that on that. Yeah, Chag is the Torah is Chag is Chag Hashem Shavas Yavim. So since the 7 days, it says we need 7 days to she is Papsimanian. What does that mean? Publicize it. Basically, I think it's a similar idea that when he says about Pesach. Like, come on, you can have a festival for 1 day. Like that's boring. We need to do 7 days. So again, why 7 and not 6 and not 8? So that's probably going to go back to the thing where 7 is a number that people like to do things for.
And so it approximates, I just Googled it, it approximates the individual cycles of the moon within a month.
Yeah, but these individual cycles are what? Like they're arbitrary, right? I mean, like you could say like there's full moon, there's a half moon, and there's a quarter moon.
So there's just moons and eighths.
Yeah, we can divide it as much as we want. Not sure.
I mean,
It's approximate because month is not really 4 weeks. Okay, that I understand. But why? I don't know.
4 quarters and $1. I don't know.
Yeah, there's all these things are sort of approximate because nothing is exact enough. I think that's why it's the best thing to have is Zichron aspiration. Spend during a month and forget that very easily. Zichron aspiration, save it for the moon. You can look at it. What's Zichron aspiration?
See, it's very good to have Shabbos as Zeichron aspirations and not like other things.
Because it doesn't mean anything.
Because, yeah, you can't identify it right away.
I understand.
It's a quarter of the moon, but
Yeah, and only because of this Sheshes Yaman. shtat itself we need to make sense of. Okay. Anyways, that's the story with Sukkot. So Sukkot is money for Simcha. So you need 7 days for that. Okay, now, wow, I'm not finished. I'm just using up all my time. I don't know when did we start this thing? Nobody knows. Right? 7 days ago? Sorry, technically. Okay, I have to say one more thing. So now, why Sukkot is in this time? So why Pesach is in the time? We know. I mean, but it says in the Torah. What? It's not in that time. Okay. So why Sukkot is in this time? Nobody knows, right? Did children teach them in school? Why is Sukkot is in Kodesh Tishne? Us. Okay. Karen?
Why does it say that? I'll not spoil it.
You know what I mean. Okay. So anyways, he says, the Torah says the reason. It's not clear to me that the Torah means to say the reason of why it's in this time, but that's what he says. So the Torah says the reason, and the reason is Ba'as Kavanah Soda. What's that? What's the point of that? So he said the pshat, this is the first pshat. Again, where all of this is still sort of, at least in this lens, in the body pshat. He says, because we have time. Because so you've got to work all summer or whenever, when there's work to do in the field, you have to work. But when there's no more time, that's a good time to make your festival. And then he quotes Aristotle to explain the Torah. This is one of the only time in the whole book that is the actual quote for Aristotle, or at least of the ethics. One of the only actual quotes. And there's other quotes, there's a famous quotes in other places, but it's one of the only quotes that he quotes from the ethics. And he says like this, that Aristotle in the ethics says that this was the old minhag. Not only did the Torah has this minhag, all nations had this minhag. So the Greeks had the same minhag. And this is not the tzaba. Interesting. Here's like a good, because the tzaba, we do all the things the tzaba where the Getzendiners, whatever, the Getchka people that Rambam says they do everything the opposite from that. But here we're doing the same.
Who came first?
Yeah, no, what came first was the harvest. Who came first, Aristotle or Moshe?
No, just do the
Aristotle was after Moshe, but
they would do the Yidden were doing.
Yeah, so he's trying to prove but he's trying to give a reason. So why would the Torah choose this time? It says Aristotle says, and he says Aristotle says that the ancient festivals and sacrifices, kibbutzim, that's festivals or sacrifices in English, were always after the harvest. And Aristotle says that if these were like karbonos or sacrifices for the times of pleasure or for times of how's it called, leisure. What Aristotle,
Basically, he knew that it had no correlation to.
No, he's not saying that we stole it from them. It's just saying
they didn't steal from us either.
no, it's a natural thing. It makes sense. It's showing you what the Rambam seems to be doing. I think there's a lot more going on there. But what he seems to be doing is showing. And again, it's weird. Like you need to do Upkan Aristotle, like it's a little interesting. There's a question. Like this whole book is based on Aristotle. Thank you very much. Like, okay, so Aristotle told us the speed of history. And there's the start thing here. No, it's from that book. Yeah, but no. So it's I think that he's doing something very interesting. He's saying, so the Torah says it's Mana Asif, and thank you very much. That's a normal thing. Everyone knows that. Everyone knows that kabbonis are by the big sacrifice were always, that's when people are not working. So when else are they gonna do it? It seems like in the Rambam day, it seems like there were no harvest festivals. Why not? I don't know. There's no many. But in the ancient times, that's how everything was. Maybe the Tzaba didn't do that. I don't know. At least the Greeks did. What do we gain out of this? So it's very weird because Aristotle's point over there. Okay. No, so Aristotle's point is no shaykh to this. Aristotle's not giving Tami Ameatum. That's not his book is not about Tami Ameatum.
It's after the Romans and seeing people lived in cities and then
there was that one lived in cities all his life.
Because already were pretty urban. So a metropolitan, I don't think it existed.
Already Aristotle is an urban person. I mean, he's already talking about living in a city, which is not like the Zaydists that used to live in the field. Like, there's still most of the world is still living in the country, but like these people that we're reading, they're all the city people. Right? Yeah, it's true. I have a lot of thoughts about this.
And the field people wouldn't even need this. And of course,
city people don't really have Yom Tovim.
And city people
disconnected.
have a different malachas. I don't know if it's bad. It's different.
The city people don't start doing malacha by the end of either.
Well, they invent lamitas malachas, all kind of things.
No, well, the best Hanukkah and Purim don't have those.
Hanukkah, Purim, urban advertising.
That's what I'm saying. They don't have any. At least the urban people don't like to say I'm working.
Well, they don't live off this kind of cycle. Maybe just not time that you could stop working. You could also say that. We don't live in this cycle as extremely. I mean, to some extent we do, but not that acutely as the farmer people. That's true. And this is true. It's true for a very long time. The Hemi already had an urban thing going on. That's why it was a whole thing for the circus noise. Because everyone, I mean, again, Hemi was a Jerusalem person. There was a lot of country around, but they all were able to come. It's all different, very different. Baistrani already was a very large urban population. Should don't think to be administration. Yeah, that's definitely part of the story. So again, this is like a historical fact. So that's why we have it in this month, because it's a big problem. The urban people. That's why we need religion to remember. So we never know when to stop. So by now the stock market only closes for random. It's like someone asks, why does the stock market close at 5:00 p.m.? Makes no sense. The computers are still running. Okay, so in the olden days you used to run a train for the stock market. At least they exchange pieces of paper to sell the stocks. And in order to buy a stock, you have this big file somewhere with all the certificates of the stocks that you own. Since the half-mass stock market understood that it still makes sense to have this thing stop at some point. Well, it doesn't really stop because you have aftermarket sales, whatever it's called. What it's called. But clearly, there's some point in having a fixed price at the end of the day. And so we still have it, like a relic. Okay, but Aristotle's making a different point. So Aristotle's not interested in this history thing over there. What he's doing is something very different. What he's making, and I'm pretty sure that I'm read that book. He's giving you a man Milton. Says it's the 9th book of the Ethics. That's actually in the 8th if you look in our version, but he had a version that doesn't make a difference. The Rambam that Aristotle's making a point there. In Aristotle's book, the whole book over there, the book 8 of the Ethics, is about friendship. Very important to say this. He talks about the 3 cards of friendship famously. There's useful friendships, and there's pleasurable friendships, and there's good friendships, right? In Hebrew, there's a acronym for it, right? Tam, Plebot of Mile. Very famous Hebrew acronym. There's things for the good and things that are sweet, things that are useful. And he goes through, of course, the only real good friendship is the one based on the good. There's, sometimes your friend, you're doing business with someone that's based on common interest, or sometimes you're drinking buddy with someone and that's based on pleasure, and so on. And he talks about, then what he's trying to get at is to show that all these things need to be subsumed under politics, under the total good of everything, of the full human life, or the full city, or the full society. And what he starts saying is that if you think about it, the reason why we have all these political organizations, well, they start off from people just looking after their own use, their own, what do you call it, to Ellis, right? They're trying to make business. You need a marketplace and so on. And the Republic describes the beginning of cities. And then he says, well, and it seems like there's also these all kind of associations that are just for pleasure. And he says, for example, and he's has a kasha. He wants to prove that everything in a city is part of one system. This is really Chol Masef Sham Shemayim. Because at the end of the day, everything you do there has to be a king at the top, really. It's a good king and not a tyrant or whatever. There has to be a king on the top, which is going to lead everything into the good. All the things that you do, all the different associations that people in the city have, they all have to be part of this whole full human good, which is in the whole society, which is in the whole human life. You can't just say, well, I'm just going to make money. Okay, what do you do with the money? And so on. And then he says, well, and he tries to prove that all the kinds of friendship that exist are all part of a city. They're all part of politics. And politics is just a word for city. And he says, well, okay, you could say, okay, people do business because they, but then what about all these pleasure things, all these pleasure associations? We have people that are, there's the horse riding society, or whatever they're called. I forgot what it's exactly. Something similar to that. Yeah. But what about the religious clubs? What do you think they're for? Our religious clubs, in his language, is just these people that get together to do festivals and sacrifices. and they belong, like this is polytheism, so each one belongs to their chassidus, and you worship this goddess, and we worship that goddess, and we get together every year, keep her, Yitzchok or whatever. And what is that for? That seems to be just for pleasure. So and that's like a kasha on his theory that all of these things are supposed to fit into the perfect society that we're trying to make or want to have. And then his teretz is, and he says, well, yeah, it does seem like these things are just for pleasure. And he says, I have a raya for this, right? Because how do I know that it's for pleasure? That's like part of the question, the employment that he has. Because we see that all the festivals are at the times after the harvest, all the ancient festivals. And if you read, there were a bunch of famous Greek harvest festivals. And why is it that? It seems like when you're not working, they're just for having fun. They're just for enjoying yourself. That's his mention. That's the line that Rambam quotes, where he says, "Well, everything is for leisure and for pleasure," because that would really be a question to him. That's why he found.
What's interesting that and like also celebrating a successful season.
Yeah, he doesn't say that. He said the way he sees these festivals is something like, yeah, they're reciting honors to the gods, they're thanking the gods, and they're like maybe giving the bikurim, like first fruits, to the gods, and it's part of pleasure. Like we're gonna make sure the gods are happy, and we're gonna be happy too. Everyone proves very great arrangement. And this is basically all ancient. I mean, even all ancient religious worship is basically about making everyone happy. Like the gods listen to be happy. The gods, are the ones giving us the grain, so we got to make them happy at the right time. But he says, well, when do we make the gods happy? Basically, when we're happy. And we're trying to make it work for everyone. But it's just about pleasure. It's what's the point. And it seems like, well, pleasure is somewhat better than just looking after utility, but it's still just pleasure. It's not about the good and it doesn't fit into the city. So this is like a problem for him. So you have to say, well, if you think about it, no, and then there's that, it's for the thing to gain some advantage, that find some good. And therefore, in the end of the day, it's also part of the political community. It fits in. So it seems to be very interesting. And I'm pretty sure that the Rambam was trying to get at something like this over here. Where he has in other words, anciently, like originally, as Yom Tov, just for fun. And God should be happy with us, we're going to do the Shana and Bishvil Sheis Baruch whatever other thing. We're going to live Chamayos without water. That's just part of, it's also pleasure, and also just like use, we need rain. But it's also specifically pleasure, because the holidays are not just utilitarian. It's not just there's Rosh Hashanah, like we got to have a good year. We got to have a good year, and the Bisman Simcha said, we have to be happy. And we need to overcome this problem. We need to explain how this is actually also part of the political community, which is the community organized, where all these things are organized towards, the human good and the community for everything. And that probably goes back, for Rambam would definitely be going back to what he said earlier, that all these things help people be friends with each other, and then they're gonna also, and then it's gonna go to the next thing where the Me'adim also teach us good virtues and good truths. I would assume that that's something like that is going on here. So in other words, this thing that he says that Aristotle already told us that historically the festivals were in harvest. It's not just, okay, now we understand it. You can see from the Torah, you don't need Aristotle for that. I think it said, if you read it that way, maybe you could do it other ways. But if you read it, okay, it makes sense. Okay, we're not working. He's using Aristotle to show that that's like originally, or Havamin Me'adim are just for pleasure. And when Moshe Rabbeinu, and it seems like to say, Moshe Rabbeinu comes, it says, yeah, that's nice, but we're going to include this in the political community. We're going to include this, and we're going to say you have to Mishlech Manas, but the Rambam says twice, and not we have to share with our neighbors. We have to use the holiday not just for our own pleasure. And again, our own pleasure includes God, right? We're going to make God happy too. But we have to also share it with the Oni, V'Ager, V'Yosem, and so on. So we need to use that. And also we're going to have to remember all the das, or the midas that he says. And he says, basically, and he says, and that's what the next thing is, that Sukkah, it says another, by the way, one more thing, I forgot. One more thing that he says about this. So this is one reason why Sukkot is this time. The second reason, if you want me to start off that, the second reason Sukkot is this time is because it's a good time to sit in the Sukkah. That's backwards. Because not too hot and not too cold. So when you have to sit in the Sukkah, but you sit in the middle of the winter, you're going to freeze to death. In the middle of the summer, you're going to burn to death. Tisha is a good time. That is what the Rambam says, but it doesn't backwards.
Yeah, because why is it? Well, it's nice outside.
Yeah, so it's backwards. If it's nice, that's
It's
what
better. It's when you're sitting outside. It's a good time to spend with friends.
Yeah, but they have to go in the so. But man, probably he's thinking of what he's going to say afterwards. That the sukkah is really the mitban and whatever. And since we have to do this, we might as well do it at a time where it's convenient. This is the opposite. I always make this comment. This is the opposite of what the Torah says. Very famous Torah that they teach in all the elementary schools. That why don't we do sukkahs and if it's both Israel, why do we do it in September? We should do it in Pesach. And the Torah says, yeah, if we would do it on Pesach, people would think that we're just doing it because it's Geshmak. That's why the Torah says should do it when it gets cold. So no, we're doing L'Shem Mitzvah.
But it's the same weather. Yeah.
Okay, so the answer is that depends where you live. Wherever the Torah lived, it was already cold in September. And therefore he had this chat. But in the Mediterranean, it's pretty much the same weather as El Nissan. So that's not the reason. Yeah, and there's like this whole, you end up with a whole theology that's based on doing things which don't work for us, but only work for God. Whereas the Rambam's theology is about God making things that work for us. There's a whole different way it's Hashem because of living in the wrong temperature. That's what happens when you live in God's. Okay. So, and I'm going to stop, I think. We have to finish. Okay, and because of that, there's two things in Pesach and Sukkot both teach us opinions and midas klevus. So good true opinions and true virtues. The virtue in both, and this is an interesting chat, the virtue of both is to not think that you were born rich. Important. Remember that you were once poor. So we're very comfortable now in Israel. Well, not now, historically. And now also, and we forgot that we used to be these nomads in the deserts. So once a year, go out to the desert and remember that's where you're getting from. So you have a curse of toiv, where you have some humility and things like that. And the same thing with Pesach, you eat matzah to not be too comfortable. And the Das, he says very, very shortly, the true opinions, he talks about Avram Yitzchok. Okay, I can give more classes on this next time. Anyways, and the true opinion is the Nissim of Yitzchok and the Nissim of the Mitzvah. That's all he says about that. And then he talks about the Lulav and so on. He says he has the same kind of reason for why these Dalet Minim. He says, why would these? Well, the Dalet Minim is basically, since we're not in the Midbar anymore, so we got all these nice pillars, so we're celebrating that. But why these pink? Well, they're nice and so on. But also because they're cheap. That's basic. They're cheap and they're easy to find. So you don't have to work too hard. That's another thing. Change the fruit. And that's, again, depends on where you live. If you live in a place where they're cheap, then this chat works. If they're not in this cheap, then they're stuck. What?
This is all got dumb, then this stuff.
Yeah, I don't know if Amam wherever you lived, it was cheap to buy us. Maybe it was, I don't know. But definitely, already in the Gemara, we see that it was expensive to buy that minute. But they were living in the wrong place. Their problem. Yeah, okay, that's enough for now.
That's it.
Yeah.